Hey everybody, it's Monster back again with Opus Gaming, and I'm here today to bring you a purple Kaido deck profile. This is the same list that I was piloting in on stream the other day when I was playing on stream, and I've been playing this deck a lot at a lot of my locals, so this is just something I wanted to bring to everybody and kind of talk about. If you guys have been following the channel for a long time, you guys know that I'm a huge Kaido fan, so piloting Kaido into this format is definitely a puzzle, but it's a pretty fun puzzle to figure out. But before we talk about the channel, before we talk about the deck profile anymore, though, you guys already know I have something special for you guys today, and we're going to talk more about the playmat rug that I have. This was done by a friend of mine, MDR Rugs, who just got his Instagram account up and running now. So if you guys want a custom playmat, a bespoke playmat just like this, you guys can shoot him a message. I'll have the link down below. But this thing has been so amazing. I've been playing on it every time I bring it to locals, because it's a larger playmat, right? And it's got like just this really nice texture. Whenever I bring it to locals, right, my opponents are always like touching it, talking about it. Whenever like I'm just kind of like gliding cards on it too, it just feels so good. So this playmat is actually really fun, and this is an idea that kind of me and him were talking about. But having it go from like idea to having it in hand and having it in hand for so long, I've been loving this playmat. So if you guys are interested in one, like I said, just click that link down below. But I just really want to give a huge shout out to him and like a huge thank you from everybody over here at Opus Gaming, over to MDR Rugs. So yeah, but let's talk about Kaido and let's talk about the channel a little bit. You guys already know I'm on my way to 1,000 subs, so drop a sub if you're not subbed already. Leave a like, leave a comment. But with this Kaido list, this is the reason I've been playing this so much is just because this is one of the decks that I have that are is finished right now. A lot of my decks are kind of up in the air with how all over the place I've been with traveling and stuff, but how all over the place the meta has been. My local meta develops a lot, so it's been nice going back to locals. But I kind of want something that's like a jack of all trades, and that's the reason I think Kaido is just like really strong right now. So there's not too much to say about the leader. This is something that everybody kind of knows from back in the day. So we'll just kind of tuck him up in the corner here. And we'll just talk about some of the stables here. Talking about for Onigashima, this is one that really doesn't even really need too much talking point. This is the cornerstone of the whole deck. And what is crazy right now is that in OP-01, you could get away with not opening your Onigashima no matter like what you did. But honestly, now that we're in OP-02, all the decks are so fast that you actually need to open this every single game. Or not open it, but you have to see it on curve or early enough in your curve to make it impactful, because your big guys are really the cards that are hard for your opponents to deal with. So nothing crazy to talk about with Onigashima that nobody knows already, just that it's like, I would say it's honestly maybe twice as important as it used to be. So that's really interesting in my opinion. Next up we have Who's Who. Who's Who is like a for sure inclusion right now, because you drop this on curve next to your Onigashima Island, really depending, but you drop this to pop your opponent's Okikus and you grind through those low to the ground threats that your opponent drops, like Okikus, like Zoros and stuff like that, even against red aggro. Before in OP-01, I didn't really have an issue running into any red aggro decks at all, just because it was such an easy defensive sequencing. Now it's just way different. Nowadays, I really need help out of my trigger to come onto the board, pop one of my opponent's characters, so that I can keep up pressure, but B, have an additional attacker that can attack my opponent's just attack my opponent's little bodies, as well as put on a little bit of pressure himself. So we have two Who's Who. Next up, getting into the blocker package, we'll talk about first up the 2 Kurozumi Higurashi and the 4 Queen. The reason we're only on 2 of this is only because right now in the meta it feels like red is everywhere, and it's really easy to either rest low-cost blockers or just KO low-cost blockers. So Queen is also pretty easy to rest when you're talking about Yamato, but in the sense of this card being just poppable by Yamato and by Vista and Seaquake, like there's just so many cards that you add on top of the outs that Queen already has. So right now, playing a lot of blockers and defensive blockers seems very difficult, because you have to play enough of them to kind of like replace themselves all the time, but then you need other cards to make an impact. So that's the reason that we're on 2. It's just so easy to kind of get rid of right now. And then obviously 4 of Queen, because Queen is an absolute staple. That card is just a unit. And then the last blocker that we have, because this is going to lead into our film engine, is the Uta. So Uta's in here to help bolster our film engine, but also because Uta is an amazing blocker right now. Sometimes you have to sack the body just to get out of 2 attacks, but you'll notice a lot of our defensive focus is focusing against those wider boards when you can just knock out two attacks, right? So you're blocking the one attack and you're resting down another character on their board. Uta drops against a wide board so effectively, and it's just really good at 4, so I really like her. Continuing with the main package of the film, we're going to get into the rampers. So we have Karina and Ain. Ain is at 3 just for space in the deck, and that's all I can really say about it. This has been feeling really good to board in the mid game. Tapping 4, getting a ramp, and putting a card that can attack into other cards is super nice. So in the same situations where you're playing against like Red Zoro and stuff, sometimes if I have Ain and I have Onigashima Island, I will take 1 turn off to not play the Onigashima Island, and I'll board the Ain so that I can then attack into one of their bodies that I know is going to attack into me on the following turn, and then just play the Onigashima on the next turn because I for sure will have enough Dawn. Touching on Karina, this card is just single-handedly the best ramp card in the game. This card is just absolutely ridiculous. The fact that it's not like once per turn for, well, I guess there's not really a limit 1 like there is in Drag Ball. But the fact that you can resolve 2 of these, if you stick them in the early game, your opponent doesn't out them, or you stick them in the mid game, and your opponent like tries to push on to kill you, you can do things like activate Kaido leader ability twice in a turn. If you're from 10 Dawn, go down to 3, go back up to 5, tap here, go up to 6, and if you have a second one, you have enough ramp on that turn to ramp again. You can't really ramp too well. Well, you do have 3 Dawn when you do Dawn -7, so if you have 1 on board and 1 in hand, you can tap the one that you have on board and then play the one from hand is what I'm trying to say. But combos like that are what I'm trying to say, but the fact of the matter, it all boils down to the fact that Karina just ramps you super, super fast. So you have to play a certain amount of film card, not a certain amount of film cards, but you play film cards in certain slots to help bolster how often you can trigger Karina. So this is really good, and as you can see on our top end, it's going to be super aggressive for the top end, and you use things like Karina to bounce you back on Dawn so that you don't just like burn out going into the late game. So getting into our 2K counters, we're going to start off with the film ones. We have 4 of the Buena Vista and 3 of the Shiki. We have a ton of 2K counters in this, so playing 1 or 2 Buena Vista per game doesn't hurt us too much, but it just depends on how many cards we see per game. One thing I really like, and you can't really force this to happen, when it does happen, it's really nice, is when you have a Buena Vista in the early game and an Onigashima Island, because I don't like playing Buena Vista if I haven't seen my Oniga yet, because you can then bottom deck it by revealing 5. But if I know that I'm playing Onigashima on 3, I love tapping 1 and playing Buena Vista to then search some of my film boss monsters. So Buena Vista is actually a really good counter card, and it's a really good searcher. And then Shiki helps in the same way that Who's Who does, but it doubles as a 2K counter. So it comes out on the board. It doesn't pop anything on play, but it comes out and it can help you take care of your opponent's wider board state. And it can just be an additional attacker. If you really need to and you have a bunch of Dawn, you can use it as a way to go for game. But Shiki is actually a really good card. And one thing about the 2K counters is that a lot of time they don't double as other cards well. So like playing this card as a card that is just triggered, you get the option when you flip it in life or when you look at it in life, if you're in the game state where you just need defensive power to hand, you just add it to hand just like a 2K counter. But it doubles as being able to come out and be an aggressive piece as well. And that's nice because when you're looking at things like Sasaki and things like Ulti, they kind of do nothing outside of being a 2K counter. So these are going to be the last 2K counters that I run, are 2 Sasaki and 4 X-Drake. X-Drake can come out in the late game and just really do a lot actually against your opponent, so it's always going to be a pretty cool card. And Sasaki, it's like good in theory. It's always been good in theory, but it's never really been too good in practice, so I've never really loved playing it as my card to ramp going through the game because I feel like I pay too much resource to get that ramp. So I like ramping in other ways, but it is there as just kind of a 2K counter, and in like a really bad emergency, you can ramp with it, but 99% of the time you won't. It'll just be a 2K counter. So in this slot, I took out 2 of the Sasaki because a lot of people were playing this at 4 of. We took out 2 of that and just filled it with Shikis because this card doubles really well. And same thing with the Buena Vistas. It was really easy to drop something like an Ulti for a Buena Vista because Buena Vista just does something. Next up, we're talking about our 6 and 7 drops. This is going to be our 2 kings. We're playing 1 of the 6 drop king just because we're not seeing blue in the meta too much. As you see more blue and green really relying on the Yamatos, if that's hard for you to remove, I can see king going up. But honestly, right now, it's really about the 7 drop king and taking care of white board states. They both perform pretty decently, but neither of them are as good as like Kaido. So dropping them on tempo, you're required to have additional ramp. So if you're dropping a king, you just need to drop this when you have an Onigashima or it just costs too much. And honestly, it's the same thing for just Don -1 on your king. It costs too much and it hits your curve a little bit too much if you don't have other ramps. So that's why I say that it's a little bit harder right now to play Kaido without Onigashima, because you just have all these plays that are kind of devalued by not having additional ramp. Next up, we're going to talk about our boss monsters. 3 of the 9-drop Kaido, 2 of the 8-drop Kaido, and none of the 10-drop Kaido. We'll start off with why we're playing none of the 10-drop Kaido. I just feel like the meta's too fast right now and it costs too much. Playing out, if your opponent knows that you're going to be dropping the 10-drop Kaido throughout the game or at the end of the game, they're just going to swing with everything at you. And if you have to dump either your entire hand just to stay alive, or your other option is to try your best to try to stay at 2 life, it just doesn't feel like a sound strategy for this list, because we don't have as many blockers to just board and sit on. That's really the reason that we're not playing that. But 9-drop Kaido, on the other hand, is fantastic. When you're able to resolve it, you really want to rush to play this card as fast as possible and just tap 9, pop something on the board like a 5-drop Luffy, and then attack into Zoro. Plays like that really help you restabilize, and Kaido is just, he's just your restabilizer. Now for the Douglas Bullet, this is just going for the Wombo combo. When you board a Douglas Bullet, when you don't have enough Dawn to play the Kaido, or even if you do have enough Dawn to play the Kaido, but like you have enough life and defense in hand to stay alive, it's pretty ridiculous, because you might -9 of your Dawn and play 1 turn on like 4 or 5 Dawn, but after that turn, you'll end that turn on like 7 Dawn and then go to 9 Dawn. Using cards like Karina, Onigashima, Ain, there's just so many different ways for you to ramp additional cards. Really, the Karina comes up in clutch though. When you're playing these huge Dawn minus turns and making huge impact on what your opponent can do, really bouncing back with a Karina is almost required. So altogether, it comes out to be just a really combo-y kind of deck, but everything kind of plays together super nicely. So we'll drop these guys down here and we'll just kind of go through all of the counters. We have a lot of them, so let's start with the Thunder Bagua. Thunder Bagua is really good. This card is one of the testing slots. This is something that if you see another card that you really want to play, you can swap it for the Thunder Bagua. This is here to help you with your ramp, but it kind of teeters, right? Because you have to see it early enough to know that you can be safe going down to 2 life, and it doesn't always save you. So you have to have enough of your bombs to drop onto the board to KO your opponent to sit on a card like this. But Judgment of Hell, this card is fantastic because it blocks 2 attacks. This paired with your Uta, it feels like you have some pretty crazy defense with just 2 cards, and it's only 6 non. So you tap 4 to play the Uta, leave 2 up for Judgment of Hell, and you're in a really good position. Judgment of Hell minuses 3k on 2 of your opponent's character or leader cards. So it doesn't matter what order they attack with. It's going to make it so they have to burn additional Dawn so that they can't push into you super effectively. So I like Judgment of Hell quite a bit. And then Blast Breath is just, it's Blast Breath. It's a 1-cost counter that gives you plus 4k. And that's just really, really useful. When we're talking about how aggressive and how fast the meta is right now, it's just an important tool to have, and it's really easy to leave 1 Dawn in addition just for your defense and kind of push full throttle. So that's going to wrap up the deck profile. That's everything kind of accumulated. That's why I'm playing everything. And I think that this deck, it's a really good base. There are some things that I think I want to change before the end of the meta, but making it a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more consistent. I've really realized that starting Onigashima or getting it in the early game is really do or die. I think the defensive package is really good, but you just have to know your matchups, and that's something that's really important. And playing to the Douglas Bullet into the Kaido play is really, really easy to do and so effective against decks like Law and stuff like that. Oh man, it's a field day, because you just rest down their Law blocker, one of their 1-drop blockers, you play this, KO the other blocker, and you just start swinging with everything, double attack. It's hard for them to get out of. So this deck comes together to be pretty fun. I really like the film engine. It comes together to be a pretty consistent engine, and it doesn't overbearingly take up any slots. You do have to run the 3 Ain that don't have counter power, and if you do want to swap this out for something else to ramp, or not necessarily just a ramp, but something else to kind of play that has counter power, you could totally do that. It's just kind of up to you to kind of find those choices. So that's going to wrap up the deck profile. That's everything I kind of have to say about it into the meta and everything. So if you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below. But you guys already know, it's going to be Jamonster with Opus Gaming, and I'm out. Take care.